Rishi, hey coach, what's your boxing, running, lifting split per week? Having trouble balancing everything. I'm listening to you, buddy. I'm having trouble balancing everything. It's really, really, really hard to listen to your body and to find what's appropriate. What I always tell people is I'm usually looking to run daily or every other day. I feel the best when I can do that. I don't like to put 2 or 3 days in between my runs. But again, you need to remember that those runs, as much as they're about that 30 minutes of aerobic activity, I think it's what's called zone 2 cardio. You should be able to have a conversation when you're doing these runs. You're not meant to be redlining it. They're also about cueing up your body. They're also about cueing your feet to absorb and generate force in that agile triple extension manner that allows you to move in boxing and allows you to generate power in boxing. So I always tell guys, like, I'd almost rather you go on like a little 10-minute run every day. And if you have the energy for those longer runs, then bring those longer runs into play if you got the energy for it. Um, as far as balancing lifting stuff, lifting I feel very similarly about as well. I think a lot of the lifting work is cueing, because of the demand of the technical aspects of your sport in boxing. How you doing, Raheem? Happy you're here, buddy. Listen up. There's a bunch of boxing tips coming your way. So yeah, because of the physical demand of your technical work in boxing, you need to dose your lifting really differently. In other sports, if you're playing soccer, when you're doing skills training, that's not especially taxing on your body. You're working with your team, you're running drills and plays, you're moving the ball around. Um, that's not very dampening on your central nervous system, on your CNS. But when you're boxing, sparring is a huge stressor that's really tough to recover from. And when you're hitting the bag, it's the same thing. So, because of that, you can't have like a really hard chest day or a really hard deadlift day that leaves you fried for 2 days after that, because then you're missing skills work, or you can't bring good skills work to the table when it comes time to spar, because you need to be fresh for that. So I really like what Bernard Hopkins talks about, where he says, like, your strength training should be something that you can do daily. And that doesn't mean that you can't bring intensity to it, but it just means that if you're going to bring intensity to it, you have to limit the volume. So, a really, really good example of this would be, my daily routine is really basic. I'll do box jumps every single day, but I'm only doing one set of 5 box jumps. Now I make a max effort. I jump as high and as hard as I can. And you look at that, and that means I train 6 days a week. That means I get 6 sets of 5 of those box jumps, and I never feel fried. And I always have the return of that cue, being explosive with my legs and explosive with my hips without ever being fried from it. If I took that same volume and I put it in one day, if I did 6 sets of 5 max effort box jumps, then I would be toast for 2 days after that. Um, it's really, really important to remember that you need to be elastic, you need to be springy, you need to be explosive as a boxer, and you need to be able to bring that to training daily. So you can never do anything that leaves you so toasted that you're not able to bring your best. Um, so I know when you say you have trouble balancing everything, a lot of my daily workouts look very similar. You know, I'll do 20 minutes of mobility work, 20 minutes of what I call strength training, which are things like box jumps, things like explosive pull ups, things like plyo push ups. I do a little bit of kettlebell work. And then I'll do my skills work. And my skills work, live drilling takes precedence, Everybody has their kind of balancing act. I like to get between 4 and 8 rounds of live drilling a day, whether those are defense rounds or jab sparring or us practicing a specific combo together or me and somebody doing high-low drills or whether it's actual full sparring. And then I like my total roundage for the day to sit right around 12 or 15. So whatever I have left after that, I will do as shadow boxing or bag work. Though at this point, as I'm getting older, I do less bag work. I'll usually just do a round or two of bag work just to make sure that my punches feel strong and snappy and I'm timing my hips correctly. I think you need to do the bag work regularly, but I don't think you necessarily need to do a lot of bag work on any particular day. So, you're asking me for what my running lifting split would look like. A perfect day for me would be get a 4 mile run in the morning, approximately 30 minutes of work, uh, go to the gym, do some live drilling, let's say 4 rounds with somebody who knows what they're doing, do a round of bag work after that, and then do 6 or 8 rounds of shadow boxing. And then I'll do a little bit of S&C, and that's a perfect day for me. But it's the same thing most days. I'm not getting any one day where I'm going crazy. The only time that I ever go crazy is with one particular thing is if I have a lot of quality sparring partners at the gym. If I have a lot of quality sparring partners around, then I will do a lot of sparring and I will skip the running and skip the strength training and I will make sure that I get that quality work in because that's the nearest thing you have to what an actual fight is. So that should always be your top priority, assuming that you can do it safely. Pay attention to your body, pay attention to your head. I've talked about this in previous videos. I don't think anybody who's a boxer, while you shouldn't be worried about CTE daily, you should also not be a meathead and you should know when you're bringing good quality technical work to something and when you've lost the lead and you're just acting like a fool. If you want to get in there and you want to just slug, finish out the rounds that you agreed to with somebody. And then when you're done, get on the bag and go ahead and slug away to your heart's content. But don't get in there with a new person or agree to do more work or more rounds with somebody if you can't bring your A game in a thoughtful, focused, growth-minded way to that sparring. Good. Other questions in the chat, guys? I got 9 of you guys who are tuning in here, and I've only gotten one question so far. Isaac, I'm not going to be at the gym today. I don't know if you heard me say I didn't get back until like 2 in the morning from the guys at the fights in Maine last night, so I'm fried. I'm going to what am I going to do? I'm going to play video games all day. I just found out that the PlayStation, so I'm an old head. I know you guys know that. I just found out that the PlayStation Store has like a classics section. So I downloaded the very first Sly Cooper game, which is a game I used to play when I was a kid. I love Sly Cooper. So I'm probably going to hang out today and eat like an entire stuffed crust pizza and play some Sly Cooper. That's what I'm going to do. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. At this point, like that game was so old, I'll bet you it's only like I'll bet you that's like an 8-hour game. If I just like sat down and actually played it through, I could probably beat that whole game today. So, I might do that. We'll see. Yep. Or maybe the wife's got some other plans and she wants to go downtown or something, but we'll figure that out. Good. Yeah, of course, Rishi. I'm sorry. I really wish that I could give you guys an answer that was like, yeah, Monday you do chest and Wednesday you do legs and Friday you do back and Tuesdays and Thursdays you run and you're going to spar on Sundays and Wednesdays. And, I wish I could give you an answer like that. But the honest answer is that does not get you the best return. That does not get you the best results. And it does not keep you sharp to bring your best to the table. Let's see. Coach, how can I deal with somebody who throws a lot of punches? Remember, firstly, thank you for the question. Remember when somebody's throwing a lot of punches because you're giving them permission to throw a lot of punches. I know it's a weird thing to say, but if you're a good boxer, you recognize that boxing at its most reductive is a game of control. They're throwing a lot of punches because you're standing in front of them. in punch range and you're not threatening them. So if you don't want somebody to throw a lot of punches, you need to be threatening enough that they don't want to open up. You need to not stand in front of them. You need to dress up your entries. You got to create ambiguity about when you're going to attack, when you're going to counter. You also need to create ambiguity about where you're going to be. Feinting with your feet and your position. Again, I know I talk a lot of smack about the Soviet style, but if you look at Bivol, Bivol checks all those boxes of the order of operations, the things that you should be doing in a fight to get the most out of it, to keep yourself the safest. So, don't stand in front of the guy. Don't let him know where you're going to be. Yep, threaten him and make sure that you have an exit strategy. Make sure you're moving laterally. If he starts throwing those punches, create traffic, tie him up, exit under an armpit. There's lots and lots of things that you can do. I always feel bad giving answers like that are broad, but the honest answer is like, pick one. You need to box the guy, and there are lots of different styles and approaches that you can take to problem solving in that. But at the end of the day, whether you're moving your feet, whether you're managing distance, whether you're threatening, whether you're extremely defensively tight and sound, whether you understand how to smother and maybe bisect the guy with the shoulder, you got lots of answers to stop somebody from throwing lots of punches at you. Yep. Let's see what else we got here. No. Brother, I saw your comment on a random channel about what you see that others don't, and I decided to check you out. Since then, I've been pretty obsessed. I'm happy to hear that. Thank you very much. You say, my work helps me to be able to find a job everywhere I go. I've been thinking about moving anyways, and I've never actually had a coach in all my gyms I've wanted to train me in my fight career. Good. Where is your gym located? Because I honestly am considering moving because I only want to fight for the rest of my career once I get very proficient. Let me tell you, my man, we are at Combat Fitness. It's a Combat Fitness MMA in Burlington, Vermont. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you. I spent years working as the head strength and conditioning coach at Bob Miller's pro boxing camp in upstate New York. And I saw a lot of pros. And I'm not interested in managing professional fighters. I'd love to have professional fighters come to me and train with me. I have guys visit the gym all the time. I go and visit other guys and help them with spars and help them with their camp and their tactics. But I don't want to manage professional fighters. That's not something I'm interested in. I want to regularly develop talent at the amateur level. With that being said, if your interest is to compete regularly as an amateur, we got to 19 events last year. We've already got to 11 events this year, and we're scheduled to get to over 20. We have a very, very busy, very, very successful amateur team up here, which I'm really proud of. And if you want to come here and check that out, I'd love to have you. Now, with that being said, I'm not a huge fan of Burlington, Vermont. There are two good things about Burlington, Vermont, and that's my gym and my church mission that I run up here. Other than that, I'm not a big fan of the area. So come visit first and see if it's for you. It's very polarizing. Some people really, really love it. It's like a weird combination, the population of a college town and a retirement village. It's a weird place. So see if you like it before coming up. But I'd love for you to visit. That would make me very, very, very happy. And I'd teach you everything I know to the best of my ability. Let me see. Jay Roth, yesterday you said you didn't like the Soviet style because it takes you out of your base. Do you think there's ways to use that style while keeping your base? The Soviet style is very, very popular right now. So, I find myself talking about it a lot. I'm not an expert in the Soviet style, but I know a lot about it. Probably far more than the average person. The Soviet style is just an amateur development system. It's just like the Bambara boxing system. It is a series of tactics and principles and best use habits that they used to succeed in the amateur boxing system back in when the Soviet Union was in power, in the 70s and the 80s and all that stuff. You look at guys, a great example is Beterbiev and Bivol were on the same team as amateurs, and you can see how different their styles are. If you use the Soviet system to get you started, to recognize that this is a bunch of old Russian dudes' perspective on how they think it's safest to develop talent at the amateur level, if you use it to learn the fundamentals, to get your foot in the door, to get comfortable working. And then once you've learned those principles to develop your own style off of that, like Bivol or like Better BF have, then there's nothing wrong with it. But to think, like, I think when a lot of people say Soviet style, what they mean is guys that do the two-footed bounce on their feet, in and out, and they use that fencing lead hand, and they have those nice relaxed arms. They use their feet predominantly as their first line of defense, and because they don't have a base, they struggle, I think, a lot of time to generate power unless they're very, very explosive, already whippy athletes. Um, I feel like every time I talk smack about the Soviet style, I am likely doing myself a disservice from a growth standpoint, but I believe what I believe. We were watching a really ugly novice fight yesterday at the amateur event that we were at in Maine, and Lee and I were joking. One of the guys was bouncing up and down, doing that two-footed bounce, that forward and backward hop, Soviet style. And the other guy was just like walking, like teetering one leg over the other. He'd have 100% of his weight on one foot and then 100% of his weight on the other foot. And, I said to Lee, I said, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. And that dude who was on one foot, that's not a good position to be in. It's never good to have your weight on one foot at a time. But he was clobbering the dude that was jumping in front of him because that guy had no feet. He had no base. And every time he got hit, he was not in a position to absorb and return that force. And every time he hit the other guy didn't seem to care because he was just floating his arm through space. He didn't have any leverage against the earth or snap of those hips to generate the necessary power to hurt the guy. So, like, again, if what you learn, if what you mean by Soviet style is having really excellent distance management and a deceptive lead hand and learning to stay relaxed, then yeah, Soviet style is great. But if you think it just means that long hook and those bouncy arms and that hopping footwork, that is not what the Soviet system was designed to imbue on guys. That's just these superficial things that are popular now that people can see and they can imitate.